Hey, it's Yesenia from Novels and Nectar. If you're new here, welcome. This is a cozy bookish corner where we talk through romance, romantasy, and whatever else I'm reading, so you can decide if a book belongs on your TBR or if you just need a quick reminder of what happened before you dive into the next installment. In each episode, I'll share a quick review, then a spoiler-heavy summary for those of you who've already read the book and just want a refresher. I will always keep the review lighter on spoilers, and I will give you a very clear warning before we move into the summary. All right, now let's get into today's book. Welcome back. So today we're talking about Anathema by Keri Lake. And before we get into it, let's go ahead and review some quick stats. This is a gothic fantasy romantasy. There is a dark gothic slow burn with a dual point of view. Spice level wise, I gave this about 2.5, possibly 3 chilies. There are a few open door scenes. The intimacy that does happens later on at the end of the book, but there are some key content warnings. Some of these include death, graphic violence, sexual abuse, torture, and grief. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump on into the review. So I was actually really excited to read Anathema, especially after seeing so much character art and hearing about its dark tone. I just had built up all of these different expectations in my mind. I hadn't really read anything by Keri Lake before, but with all of this 5-star reviews, my expectations were really, really high. So I actually waited to read this one because I had seen that this was supposed to be a duology, and the last installment was supposed to be coming out at the end of 2025. And so thinking this and thinking that I was going to be able to get a complete series, I was like, okay, let's go ahead and jump on in. And so at the time when I started it, I hadn't realized that this is now going to be a trilogy. Going in, I knew that it was going to be a slow burn, but the pacing for me felt still a little bit sluggish. The prologue was intriguing, but I wasn't really sure where it was headed. We jumped 200 years ahead to meet Mavis and her story in the human realm, and while her home life was mysterious, the pacing still kind of felt like it took a little bit, of time to pick up. When we finally meet Zavander, I was super interested in his dark, tortured character. It takes a long time for him and Mavis to actually meet in the story, but their first interaction was actually pretty great. I enjoyed the enemies to lovers dynamic and their forced proximity. There's plenty of bickering and tension between the two, which is always fun. That being said, as we progress throughout the story, I did struggle with how suddenly Savander's feelings for Mavis seemed to change. And I say this because for most of the book, he's in denial. He's not wanting anything to do with her, and he keeps pushing her away. And we're almost to like the end of the story where he clearly knows that she means so much more than he still cares to admit, yet she is still not his priority. And for me, it kind of felt like too much prompting needed to happen from other characters to get him to finally decide that, like, oh, I should care a little bit more about her. And he finally goes and pretends to be this hero. And I don't want to say pretend because it's like, obviously he goes and he's saving her, but would he have done that without so much prompting? Still, the 180 turn with his emotions and how he just shifts so abruptly felt really forced for me, rather than just like a natural progression of how things would happen honestly. The intimacy between them also kind of happens in a really weird, unrealistic way. The location where they are finally intimate, how once again he has like all this trauma, which is very understandable, and he can't move past it, but then like a couple of hours later, bam, he's moved past it. And those last couple of chapters just kind of felt like they were written in to give us the spice and to try to give the reader maybe what she thought we wanted, but it didn't really feel realistic with what would have actually happened given the circumstances and given his background. And finally, at the end, there is like this big reveal, and you think about the situation and the placement of where things are happening, And you're kind of like, okay, I guess, all of the things that we were having fun doing, like, were heard. So just kind of like disregard that. I don't know. And if you've read the book, you probably know what I'm talking about here. And if you haven't, you will get it when you get there. But overall, I still really liked the characters. I did like the overall story. I just wish that the relationship development had flowed a little more naturally, with pacing that felt like a little more consistent with the characters. But despite my issues, I'm definitely planning on reading book 2. And just be aware of the pacing and the relationship dynamics might be a little bit off. But if you're more prepared, maybe you won't be as picky as I am. So go ahead and give it a go if this is something that sounds like you'd enjoy. Okay, so from here on out, we're going to go ahead and jump into spoilers. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through a summary of Anathema. So if you have not read it yet and you want to go in blind, this is your cue to pause here. And if you're still listening and you're okay with spoilers, let's get into it. The story begins over 200 years ago in the magical world of Anathema, where a black mage named Cadavros cursed 2 brothers with sable fire, a dangerous black flame that corrupts anyone who touches it. The older brother, Branimir, was fully consumed by it, and he ends up becoming a spider-like creature. His younger brother, Zavander, survives, but is left with a curse that is dormant inside of him, marked with a scar and the words that read, "What is taken will never return," branded on his chest. In the present day, we meet Maveth in Foxglove Parish, a small village in the mortal world of Mortasia. She lives a miserable life with her adoptive family, forced to wear all black and labeled as cursed. The villagers blame her for all of the bad luck and all of the things that happen in the town, calling her a witch. She only has her sister Elijah, who actually cares about her. When Maveth cuts herself on the bone archway leading to the Eating Woods, a deadly forest that no one returns from, something shifts inside of her. She starts hearing voices of the dead and finds a mysterious egg that seems to pulse with life. Her cruel stepmother Agatha ends up selling Maveth off to marry Moros, a wealthy man who turns out to be a monster, experimenting on people with strange white stones that mutate them into horrific creatures. At the same time, Elijah gets pregnant by their step-uncle Riften, which is considered incest, even though they're only related in marriage. The village ends up sentencing both of them to banishment in the Eating Woods. Maveth refuses to let Elijah die alone and ends up following her into the forest. In the forest, a horrifying creature kills Riften and Moros. Well, actually, the creature eats Moros and ends up taking his form. Maveth and Elijah try to escape through a magical barrier, but Maveth makes it through while Elijah gets trapped on the other side. She watches helplessly as the creature closes in on her sister, and then vanishes. When Maveth crosses the barrier, she ends up in Anathema, where she's immediately captured by guards who want to assault her and torture her. Zavander, now a lethal assassin for the king, has been working with an old mage named Dalion to break his curse. They need 7 bloodstones from 7 different magical bloodlines. Maveth is the last of the Corvicae, an extinct race blessed by Morsana, the goddess of death. Her blood is the final piece Zavander needs. Initially, Zavander was supposed to kill Maveth and take her bloodstone, but when he tried, his magic wouldn't work on her. Instead, he ends up rescuing her from the prison and brings her to his castle, Eidolon. There, she meets his sister, Rikaya, who can absorb pain, and his brother Branimir, the spider-like creature that's locked in the dungeon. Zavander's been keeping Branimir caged beneath the house because he says that the curse has made him dangerous and unpredictable. Maveth begins to use her magic. She discovers that she can summon bones, she can cast ancient glyphs, and even harness other people's magic. She also finds a Corvicae puzzle book that unlocked with her blood, revealing her people's history. The egg that she found ends up hatching into a rare dragonbird hybrid that she names Ravox, who ends up bonding with her. While all of this is unfolding, Maveth and Zavander start to fall for each other, even though he's holding back because of all of his trauma. Zavander was previously enslaved and sexually abused for a century by a woman named General Lois, who ended up having metal rods pierced into his manhood. He's terrified of intimacy and doesn't think that he can be gentle. Meanwhile, The king's mages figure out that Maveth exists, and they want her blood to make a weapon against Kadavros, who's still alive and planning to unleash a plague. When Maveth and Rakaya sneak Princess Kaliza's becoming ceremony, a public deflowering ritual, the mages end up capturing Maveth and try to sacrifice her, forcing her to swallow sable fire. Instead of killing her, though, she learns to control it and burns them alive. A mage named Melantha ends up showing up and tricks Maveth. She opens a portal and shows Maveth a vision of Elysia, alive and waiting for her back in Mortasia. Maveth, desperate to save her sister, goes through even though Dalion warns her that it's a trap. Zavander eventually ends up following through. Back in Foxglove, the village is abandoned and the people have transformed into horrible, mutated monsters by Kadavros' plague. Maveth has to fight off her uncle Felix and Agatha, who are now these grotesque creatures. Zavander arrives just in time to save her from a swarm of spiders. They end up finding the crone witch, who reveals her true name is Elowyn and that she's actually from Etheria. Centuries ago, she helped hide Maveth as a baby to protect the last Corvicae bloodline. She explains that Kadavros is actually Pestilos, the god of disease, and that Moros infected the whole village. That night, Maveth and Zavander finally give in to their feelings. They don't have full-on sex because Zavander still can't handle it, but they explore each other and share intimacy. While they're sleeping that night, Kadavros ends up trapping Zavander in a nightmare vision where he's tormented by memories of his abuse. Meanwhile, Maveth has to kill Elowyn, who ends up getting infected and turns into a monster. She learns a new death glyph that can turn people into ash, and she uses it to free Zavander from this nightmare. Once Zavander wakes up, they continue exploring each other physically. He lets her touch him and see his scars and his piercings. They are softly intimate and spend hours together, finally allowing themselves to be vulnerable. The book ends with Maveth going downstairs to find food, but instead she discovers a trap door under a loose floorboard, and when she opens it, she finds Elysia, alive and hidden in the crawlspace below the house. By the end, we're left not knowing what happened to her sister, how they're going to deal with Kadavros, or what comes next.
All right, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you want to dive deeper into the books I talk about here, you can head over to my blog at novelsandnectar.com with a K, where I share spicy chapter lists, similar book recommendations, song pairings, and discussion questions if you want to keep the conversation going. If you are part of a book club and want ready-to-use questions and guides all in one place, you can also join the Nectar Nook, my membership where I put everything together for you in one cute, cozy space. And if you want to keep up with new episodes and new reads, be sure to hit the subscribe button and join my newsletter so you never miss a bookish update. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you in the next one.